You're listening to the Journey Podcast. What if everything we thought we knew about healing is just the tip of the iceberg? Join us as we explore this fascinating topic today. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Journey Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. This episode takes us on a journey through the evolving landscape of healing, exploring innovative approaches that go beyond traditional medicine. Our guest brings a fresh perspective to health and well-being, challenging conventional thinking about chronic and complex illnesses. We dive into a holistic view of healing that combines various modalities and systems of medicine. The conversation explores how this integrated approach can offer new hope for those struggling with persistent health challenges. From biological medicine to cutting-edge therapies, we discuss methods that aim to unlock the body's innate healing potential. This episode offers insights into a paradigm shift in healthcare, where the focus is on treating the whole person and revealing their inner vitality. Dr. Christine Schaffner is a board-certified naturopathic doctor who has helped thousands of people recover from chronic or complex illnesses. Dr. Christine Schaffner is a board-certified naturopathic doctor who has helped thousands of people recover from chronic or complex illnesses. Dr. Christine Schaffner is a board-certified naturopathic doctor who has helped thousands of people recover from chronic or complex illnesses. Through online summits, her Spectrum of Health podcast, a network of Eminence Health clinics, and renowned online programs, Dr. Schaffner goes beyond biological medicine, pulling from all systems of medicine and healing modalities, helping patients reclaim their wellness and reveal their brightest light. Dr. Schaffner completed her undergraduate studies in pre-medicine and psychology at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville and went on to earn her doctorate at Bastyr University. With her diverse skill set, Dr. Schaffner seeks to improve access, outcomes, and speed of recovery for patients struggling with chronic, complex, and mystery illnesses. Patients travel from all around the world to reclaim their wellness using her EECO methodology. Let's meet Dr. Christine Schaffner. Hi, Dr. Schaffner. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because shifting the paradigm of healing is such a wonderful and interesting topic for our conversation today, and I can't wait to find out more. Thank you so much for coming on today, and welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to getting to know you and your audience, and I'm always so passionate to share the topics we're going to discuss today.
Yeah, what a privilege to have you here today and actually get to hear some of your perspective, ideas, and new things that are coming up. So wonderful, wonderful to spend this time with you. Now, for starters, would you like to share a little bit about yourself and maybe where your story started and how it's brought you to what you do today and how that connects together?
Yeah, absolutely. I know we could probably spend a whole podcast talking about this, but I'll just kind of summarize on a high level. I grew up in a family of medicine. My father's an oncologist. My mother has a master's in nursing. And I always kind of was really kind of up close and centered to healthcare. I grew up on antibiotics. I just knew that kind of way growing up. And when I was in my teenage years, I really sought this other perspective of connecting the mind, body, and spirit. I was just very intrigued by that as a young woman and read books like Conversations of God and Candace Pert's Molecules of Emotion, and many of these, ideas that were very cutting edge at the time, that how could our, mind and our spirit be interlinked with our body. And so a few things led to another, and I found that there could be this other path to becoming a doctor. And so I sought that out and I became a naturopathic doctor in the US. And we get very good training. We do pre med undergrad, we go to a doctoral program, we do a residency, we do all of our basic science like we would in medical school. But we have this whole other toolkit in exploring how to really understand and come from this premise that the body is wise and intelligent and has this innate healing capacity. And if somebody is sick or suffering from a chronic illness, that we need to be detectives and understand why is the body responding in this way, and how do we remove those obstacles so we can liberate this energy that is far greater than any doctor or any treatment could imagine. So I had the opportunity to have many experiences and many mentors that led me to additional training in what we call bioregulatory medicine, which is this medicine that comes out of Europe and Austria, Germany, Switzerland. And it's very much part of naturopathic roots and incorporates functional medicine. But we also incorporate other forms of medicine like acupuncture and Ayurveda, and various strong belief in the energy systems of the body and how we can communicate and dialogue with those energy systems. And so I've just been on a fast journey. I've had 14 years of practice, and I see patients from all over the US and all over the world. And they teach me every day on how to really navigate these complexities of how people have become very sick these days. The common patient I see, they've seen dozens of doctors. I was somebody's 54th doctor, and they just have normal lab work. We were talking offline about that all of their basic blood work looks very normal. Many of their scans look normal, but they have this very, very complex and very sad regular state that they're experiencing that really affects multi systems, and there's many variables. And I think we have to look at our conventional medicine that it's wonderful for trauma and surgery. However, when we're in this gray zone and we have to build a new model of how to look at a human being, not only the physical nature and the healing capacity, but we're dynamic and we're complex, and we have this whole interrelationship with our family systems, our family of origin, our mental and emotional states, our trauma history, the trauma of being sick, our soul blueprint and our soul purpose, all of what, makes us human in this lifetime, and how that can have bidirectional effects in these greater fields of information, and how they connect to our innermost parts of ourselves. And so I've been really grateful to just have this front row seat in so many of my patients' lives. They're wonderful people who have this unending passion and desire to achieve health, which I believe we're all have the right to experience. And it's becoming harder and harder these days, given what are many of the root causes we can talk about. But there's always a way. And the body is vast and expansive and resilient. We just have to remind it and remember ourselves that that is possible. That's really half the battle. And so that's just a little summary of where I am today. I mean, there's many rabbit holes we can go into, but that's really my journey thus far.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I love your journey sort of through this conventional medicine that you grew up with. You saw that side of it as well, and where that fits in the world and where that does really well. And then also your own desire to find something a little bit different that can add to that and work together with that. So I just love that journey and your respect for the patient, the body, and how all of that comes together. It sounds like such a wonderful way to actually be addressed when you have a problem. Whereas very often we might feel like that is a bit disempowering when we see a healthcare professional and they can't help us in the end, because their tools only take them so far and there's so much more to it, as you said. Now, when your patients and clients come to see you and they've been maybe through dozens of doctors and countless pieces of lab work and tests and whatnot, what do you find nowadays that are, as you said, some of the common root causes that kind of filter into maybe across the board some of the patients, or that you see more often than other things that are happening now in this world where we have so much stress and things are a bit upside down? What are you observing?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I look at health as I was trained, and we call this looking at terrain medicine. And what that means is that my job is to identify these obstacles and liberate the body's healing energy and really allow the body to be resilient in the face of whatever comes its way. And so it's not this destiny of genetics and we're all destined to an illness and we have no power, or we are encountering a microbe that we all get these set of symptoms and we're powerless. It's a very much more empowering view of the body. And so when we think about that, then we think about, okay, what makes up our individual terrain? So that is our epigenetic blueprint, our personal health story from preconception to birth, and to all the factors that come up to, where we are in present day. It's also our nutritional status, our mental outlook, our exposures, and our impact on our immune system, and maybe the stories we haven't processed or let go of. And that combination in the nitty gritty, it looks like in regulation medicine, we talk about these things called interference fields. So these are things that are common blocks to this self-regulatory capacity. So we can have scars in the fascial fabric that can hold memory of the trauma that created the scar, but also can disrupt the fascia and the lymphatics and the nervous system and the meridian system. And so we can do treatments like neural therapy to soften the scar tissue and return it to the rest of the neighboring tissue. And again, excavate and kind of liberate that tension. And as one of my mentors, Dr. Louisa Williams, says, the island of turbulence in the body that's creating stress. And these little things really add up, and they can affect us in many ways. We also look at the oral microbiome and the connection between the mouth and the rest of the body. Many conventional dental practices, unfortunately, lead to really traumatic outcomes for people, whether those are still people having an amalgamation of metal in their mouth that contain mercury and other heavy metals that are quite neurotoxic and can be very detrimental to the brain and to our neurology and to our immune system, to root canals that are dead teeth. It's the only system of medicine where we keep dead tissue in the mouth and in a body and expect everything to work out. Cavitations in the jawbone where teeth get extracted but don't always heal, and it can be a reservoir or a pocket of infection that chronically poison the lymph and the neighboring tissues. And so no matter what lymphatic treatments you do, you never get better. We can also see that in the tonsils. That is a very important immune and lymphatic tissue that primes the gut and also is at the base of the brain. So it allows our brain to drain properly through the lymphatic network. And if there are chronic infections, they also have kind of a direct route to the brain through nerves and through different entry points that keep the microglia hyperinflamed and this chronic inflammatory process in the brain. The sinuses are also another one and can be a huge, source of dysbiosis, especially if you've had a mold exposure or mold illness. And then that is another way that we can affect the hypothalamic pituitary axis and the brain microbiome, which is a whole another topic, and all of these things. So we kind of always look at, okay, does the person have any of these issues that are preventing the body from self-regulating and healing? I would also add to that traumatic brain injury, or hitting your head significantly or an injury like that, and then a significant home exposure like a mold exposure. So those are kind of these regulation aspects. And then we look at, again, no matter what illness comes in the door, we always want to get the body to start moving. Stagnation breeds disease and illness. Quite simplistically, flow and creating flow systems in the body create more health. So is our blood sticky and our blood vessels inflamed? We need to create movement there. Is our lymphatic system overwhelmed and we have swollen lymph nodes, or we're chronically sick or inflamed, or we have pain or cellulite or bloating or headaches or brain fog or any other, symptoms? We need to support the extracellular matrix drainage into the lymphatic system and allowing what we're encountering to have a healthy immune response, plus removing metabolic waste and all of the things that come into our bodies. So creating these flow states are really important. And then supporting organs of elimination. And so that's going to be our liver and our bile, our colon and our kidneys and our lungs and our skin. We need to have some support for that. So those are all foundational. And then we look at, okay, what are maybe some primary environmental toxicant exposures that your body is really overwhelmed with and that are impacting you? So that can be heavy metals like mercury and aluminum and lead and arsenic and cadmium. That could also be things like glyphosate and atrazine, so herbicides and pesticides. There's a whole, new worry around nanoplastics and microplastics in the body. There's also this whole group of persistent organic pollutants like dioxins and PCBs and all of these things. So that kind of soup, all of us do, either better than others with eliminating that. And we have to have that whole other, set a series of circumstances working for us to have proper elimination and removal and even set the stage for detoxification. And then we see this intersection. I mean, we are conglomeration of microbiomes in our body, right? We have microbiome obviously in our gut, in our lungs, in our skin, in our brain, in our mouth, in our sinuses, really every tissue. I know we're going to find and discover that we have a microbiome. So it's really this interplay between our immune system and our microbiomes. And then do these environmental toxicants create disruption in our microbiomes and our immunity to then allow these opportunistic exposures to take hold? So then there is this whole kind of, relationship between things like Lyme and co-infections, which are more than just a tick bite these days. They're these vector-borne illnesses. There's also, chronic viral infections. And then we just added SARS-CoV-2 to the mix, which really opened Pandora's box, to people's immune systems. Chronic Epstein-Barr, the herpes familial viruses, even retroviruses, mold, mycotoxins, and fungus, and that overgrowth in the body. Bacterial infections, not only Lyme and co-infections, but things like Clostridia or H. pylori. Parasitic infections, that's a big one. You don't have to, go to a third world country to get a parasite. And that can create very many multi-systemic, not just digestive distress. And they're very rewarding to treat because people feel better. So it's this whole, okay, what are the microbial influences? And then where is the immune system either not reacting and responding enough, or where is it hypervigilant? So we have this very sensitive patient population that's emerging because of all of these things that I'm telling you about. So there's this spectrum of what we call sensitivity that often relates to the mast cell that's in our mucosa and our connective tissue and our fascia and our lymph and our blood. And it's that first line of defense, seeing, hey, do we need to mount a response? Do I have a bee sting and need to create this whole inflammatory cascade that's short-lived and then clears that allergen and poison from the system and allows the body to heal? Or is it this chronic assault and it creates prolonged exposure that these mast cells become very hypervigilant and we get this allergic phenomenon, as well as all of these chemical mediators that create leakiness and inflammation that's just prolonged? And then some patients, they get COVID 20 times, they have low immunoglobulin response or low natural killer response or low production of white blood cells from their bone marrow, so there's all of that we're thinking about. And then trauma. So trauma can be stored in our limbic brain and our amygdala and our biofield and the energy field. It can also be stored in the water in our body and the fascia and the lymphatics. We call it fascial memory. That kind of is this umbrella term from all of these places it can be connected to. And that's very big. And then I would add to that there's this whole other piece of the puzzle about our outlook and our mind and acknowledgement of life. And, not only doing the healing work, but also, taking a moment to see the beauty in life and see what has been working out for you and not just what hasn't been working out for you, right? There's a shift in perspective. And I really believe that that's an important piece of healing. Not to say that there isn't trauma to be worked on and subconscious, awareness to be worked on and working with a really healed practitioner. But I find when people really have this connection to their inner self, or they develop this connection to their inner self during this journey, they develop this alignment within their being. And then they are in kind of the flow of the right treatment at the right time, the right receptivity to treatment, the right response. Not to say, if that doesn't happen, there's something wrong with you, but it's a journey to maybe look at that. And, where can you become more open and receptive in the face of a really hard issue? I think there's a lot in life that makes us contract and close off, right? Understandably, but can we remain open and see the beauty and goodness in life, even in the face of really tough consequences? And that's a journey. I'm not saying that's an overnight process, but I do feel that is a really significant part of the healing journey. So I know I just laid out a lot, and I know this is a short podcast, but I just wanted to get all that in so people understand the framework we're working with.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to give listeners a minute to kind of let that sink in, what you've just been talking about, because if they're sitting at home or in the car listening to this podcast, wondering why possibly they haven't found the answer yet to what's going on with them or why they're so ill, look at this amount of information that you look at to actually find out what's happening. And probably no one else has done that for them yet. So here's one piece is all of these things that you consider when you work with someone, of everything that goes into our health, our wellness, our well-being, mental, physical, emotional health. And I would say that probably only the tip of that iceberg is usually what gets looked at when we actually go see medical attention for something. So yeah, just want to give that a minute and really say, this is probably why, why you're feeling like you're going crazy or nobody can find the answer, because there's only been that tiny little piece that's been scratched at the top. And there's so much more to look at. Yeah.
Yeah. And our conventional, colleagues, they're really in a tough system. They have like 5 to 8 minutes to help somebody on, this level. And that's just an impossible task. And they're quite limited and under such scrutiny. And we've just really taken the passion out of medicine for those, well-intended people who do become a conventional doctor. And it's hard to all of a sudden spend all that money and time in school and then think that this is a broken system and then have the energy to go do something else. Many people answer that call, but you can have compassion for people who don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we said, there is a place for all of that. If, you have a broken leg, go get that cast and, take advantage of what we have available for wonderful modern medicine. And if you are wondering what the heck is going on and you just cannot find the answer, then talk to Dr. Christine Schaffner, because there will be some more things that are coming up for you. Now, this seems very, I would say, as a patient, maybe even overwhelming to at some point think that, oh, there's so many things I need to look at because, oh, yes, I do have a root canal, or I might have cavitations, I have sinus problems, oh, my tonsils are constantly swollen. I do know that. So when people come to you, this could be quite overwhelming for them to actually think about. So where do you usually start with that? Are there specific things? Do you have a kind of a red thread that you follow, or something that you lay out for your patients to kind of ease them into what will be coming their way over this journey that you just described?
Yeah. There's probably some different, I would say, awarenesses or types of people who come to my office. Some people who are just, fed up and they've lost too much of their life, that they really have a high level of motivation and willingness to get better. And they want to jump in, and they, have done their research. They're sick of being sick and they are ready to dive in. And then there are people who we need to just, lovingly support them and drip things out. Maybe even their body is even too sensitive to start. So we have to go slow. So really kind of my job is prioritization and, figuring out what to do when. That is the hardest probably part of medicine. And that's really why I have a job, because a lot of this information is out there. Maybe you haven't put it together yet like this, but a lot of this information, bits and pieces, are out there. So I've developed, alongside all of my doctor tools, so labs and specialty labs and physical exam and clinical history taking and all of that. I've developed a set of tools that I use in a certain way that really help me to take all of this information from here to go here. So again, I'm coming from the perspective that I have a knowledge and a knowing and a research background in that our bodies are electromagnetic in nature. They are photonic or light in nature. We communicate with light. There is this whole amalgamation of frequencies that we are communicating with and responding to. We also communicate and respond to sound. So there's all of this whole other part of life that I'm very excited and passionate about bringing to awareness, especially in my lifetime. And there are brilliant people that have found ways to create different, what we would call bioresonance devices to communicate and dialogue with the body. So I use one called the AO scheme. It's just kind of a summation of a lot of different systems out there, but they make it user friendly. So, there are really Cadillac versions of these pieces of equipment. And then there's, what works and what is in the trenches going to help somebody get better faster. So I look at resonant frequency analysis with that. So everything in life has a signature frequency. And if it's out of range, we can see if it's not in that band of frequency, then we can make some, understanding or ideas around patterns that we should be looking into. I also use the Nest scan. That's also another way that dialogues with the body and sees priorities and where energy is blocked and where energy needs to be supported. So that's awesome. And then I've been trained in muscle testing. So I also know that the body communicates, especially with the fascia. There's a whole communication network with the fascia that, in certain circles and research papers share that it responds faster than the nervous system. And I see that in my practice. I absolutely, am sold on that idea. I think science just has to catch up and, there's more studies that need to be done. And so we can communicate with a person's fascial network and to see what is stressful in the system, what the body responds to and what their body needs now. So I use all of those tools in addition to my regular doctor tools to really identify where to start. And then, as a doctor, there's the art and science of medicine. And, I'm, of course, all the, tens of thousands of hours I've spent being a doctor, maybe even more now, who knows, and that I recognize I'm a pattern recognition machine on some level. So I see patterns and I share that. And then I will never put a limit on what's possible for somebody. I always know that no matter what the disease is or what the imbalance or where that person is, there's always a way out and way through this, illness. It's obviously it's a two-way partnership. They have to also really acknowledge and embrace that as well. But I will always hold that possibility for somebody. And so my job is really prioritization, giving people a container of coherence and hope and validation. That's half the battle. People haven't been validated for decades. And then all of a sudden, like I believe them and I know that this is what's happening on some level. And then, yeah, just really, walking that journey together with people. I'm always feel like a facilitator and kind of a quarterback. I'm not like the dictator doctor. So I really encourage people to develop their own insights and intuition and bring those to me as well. And we talk about them and I help them decode them and make sense of them. But that's kind of how that happens. I would say just to go a little bit more granular in that typically the starting point almost for everyone is how do we get their vagus nerve to be calm? How do we get the lymphatic system and the fascial system moving? How do we get some bile flow and binders going? And how do we stabilize some mast cells? So and get their environment at home. Like are they in a high mold environment, high EMF environment? Are they in toxic relationships? Like this is kind of always the starting point. And then we go deeper and deeper and deeper. So yeah, that's the patterns that have erupted, especially over the last few years.
Yeah. And like I said, this sounds like a wonderful way to actually empower someone to take charge of their own health and to find the ways that work for them to help them in what their challenges are. So, a wonderful way to work with your patients. And now you work with a lot of people, and over the years, I'm sure that you have come across some very interesting, intriguing things. Is there anything new that you're finding out as you're working with your patients? Is there anything that comes up that you go, wow, okay, this is something that I hadn't thought of before. This is something new that we could work with?
Yeah, there's many probably answers to that question. I'm always learning, but for kind of something that's affecting many people across the globe and a lot of Americans, we know I think about 30 million at least Americans is what we call long COVID or long haulers. And so I have a framework that has been very successful, never 100%. If any doctor tells you they're 100%, they're not telling the truth, but we look at this whole autonomic nervous system piece and lymphatic piece and mitochondrial piece and mast cell piece, and then this innate immunity suppression that then opens up, all of these other infections, specifically Lyme, that gets, very much in the driver's seat in the human body. And so unpacking that has been a journey of discovery. I've also relied not only in my office, but friends who do these different types of blood filtration. We do extracorporeal blood oxygenation and ozonation, also known as EBOO, EBO2, ozone dialysis, where we take the blood, we filter it, we give the body ozone, put it through a red light, and the blood looks completely different. It's bright red, and it's full of life and oxygen and, vibrancy to go back into the rest of the body to respond to this. And so that is great. In Europe, where you are, there's, I have some great friends in Alpstein Clinic in Switzerland that do ionosphoresis that came out of Germany, which is a more sophisticated blood filtration that gets the environmental toxicants out of people. That is one of the more elegant ways to do it. Detoxification of these toxicants takes a long time. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so these have shortened that gap. In the US, we can also have more access to what are called exosomes. So these are human derived, but come from people who have not had the mRNA jab. And then they are from consented women who have a C-section, donate their amniotic fluid and their umbilical cord, Morton's jelly, to then prepare and study and, make sure that they're not full of, different viruses to then inject back into humans, which are these very highly regenerative tissues in life, that can be used at certain times to regenerate orthopedic joints, or can be used for cosmetic and aesthetics for people who want alternatives to Botox and fillers. And then also just a systemic boost. There are things like stem cells from your own tissue or umbilical in the US, and then you can go outside the US to get get them cultured and expanded upon. And stem cell therapy can be expensive depending on where you go, and it's also the right time. You can't just start with stem cells. It's usually a timing thing. And then peptides are more accessible. There are these strings of amino acids that communicate and support the body's different systems. So there's some for inflammation, some to recover the immune system. A lot of thymus peptides I used during COVID and still. So, those are all the kind of nitty gritty clinical things that are exciting to me. And then, I'm a real big believer that, the future of medicine is not only these roots of medicine that I share, but really, bringing biofield science and the science and language of frequency, sound, and vibration to the forefront, and not kind of like, we've tried everything, now go do that. But okay, let's just acknowledge this is how we're wired. And I encourage my patients to meditate. I also offer intention circles and, share the power of group healing. I also work with really awesome people who are developing different devices and technologies that, are going to really bring this idea to the forefront. And ultimately, you don't need to have all these fancy technologies. We are ultimately the strongest and the most potent frequency generators. But sometimes when we're sick, we have to be brought back to that ability and supported into that, state. And that's okay. There's a time to receive and a time to give in life. So yeah, those are some of the things that are keeping me curious and interested. And I'm sure I missed dozens, but those are top of mind.
That's so fascinating. And as you said, this time in our world today where we have access to some very exciting technology, very exciting research, and we have access to different ways of looking at the body and the person as a whole, it is a fascinating time. And also a good time for people to explore that for their own health. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I can tell how passionate you are about this. So it's
Oh, thank
wonderful.
you. Yeah, no, of course. No, I always love to share. And if I can help anybody get to the right person at the right time and just have this whole other awareness to really be very much an advocate for themselves on this journey, that is what I enjoy doing, of course.
Yeah. So if listeners are curious now that we've laid this out for them and you've explained a bit how this works and what they could expect, how can our listeners work with you or connect with you? Do you offer programs or services? I know that you also have a podcast, which is fantastic. How can people reach out and how could they work with you?
Oh, thank you so much, Petra. So I have a podcast called The Spectrum of Health that you can be found wherever you find podcasts. I also have a clinic, Imminence Health, that's in Seattle, and we see people in person as well as virtually. So you can connect to us about that. And then I also developed a product line that is continuing to emerge. And I've kind of found the holes of where we really, I think a lot of product lines that I love dearly are missing. And so it's through topicals that support the lymphatics and sleep. And also, I use liposomal plant stem cells for drainage remedies. So those are at my website, iPothecary, not apothecary, but ipothecarystore.com. So thank you for letting me share these places for people to find me.
Absolutely. And we will be linking to all of Dr. Schaffner's offerings in the show notes as well. So you can check there for how to find her website for the clinic, the podcast, the products that she just mentioned. And we will put all of that in a convenient place for all the listeners to find that so they can reach out to you. And do you offer regular appointments or programs that people can work with you as well? Or how does that work?
Yeah, I have developed a few online programs you can find on my iPothecary store. There's a neuro detox program and a 7-day lymphatic blueprint. And that's by donation. So hopefully anybody who can connect to the internet can connect to those sources. And then I do have, definitely when you're enrolled in my clinic, we see each other regularly and we have a team to support you and all of that good stuff.
Amazing. We'll make sure we link up to that, and please check that out. And if you have health concerns, you are facing challenges, you are feeling like you're going crazy because you haven't been able to find the answer, please take some of those resources, check them out, and see if they are maybe some of the first steps to help you in your own health journey and journey of well-being. And is there anything else that you would like to leave our listeners with before we close out the episode? Any little words of wisdom that you've come across in your practice with your patients, anything that you'd like to leave them with?
Oh, thank you. I mean, so many, but again, wherever you are, your journey, I just want you to, really embrace this idea that, there are people out there who would be more than happy to support you, and that your body is not confused or broken or mistaken. Your body is really dealing with a lot of tremendous stress, that needs to offload and off burden in a very divine unwinding that really has to have some support and a container for. But your body is intelligent and it's not attacking itself. It's not out to get you. It's speaking to you. So just listen and be guided to your next step.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. We'll leave our listeners with that. I will point them one more time to the show notes to make sure they'll find all the links to this episode and to your offerings as well. And I just want to say thank you so very much for being here today, spending this time with us and with our listeners. I truly appreciate you. I appreciate all this wisdom and knowledge that you shared with us today. Thank you so very much, Dr. Schaffner. It was a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I so appreciate the invitation.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Journey podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Journey on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejourney.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.